Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. My name is Shogun. Joining me today is my friend Wolvenreign. And today's discussion will be on technocracy, automation, and the relevance that technology has to all subjective moralities. Also being discussed will be the unspeakable evil of Bernard London. So looking forward to this. But before we jump into it, please join us on the Roundtable Discord server where we record this podcast most every day, usually at 8 p.m. Central or 9 p.m. Central. Keep an eye on announcements channel for upcoming special events and find our hundreds of great past special events, interviews, podcasts, and debates in the hashtag RT Podcast channel. That being said, welcome Wolvenreign. How are you, my friend?
Supercalifragilistic expus, swagadociously ratitubular.
Fantastic. Happy to hear it. Thanks for joining me. Also, shout out to Wolvenreign, is our Roundtable's official voice actor. He's done some great voice intros for us in the past and will do so in the future. But today we're going to be talking about something different. We're going to be talking about technocracy. So why don't we start with that for those in the audience who aren't familiar with the term. What is technocracy, my friend?
Well, it has many different meanings. I'm going to be using specifically the definition that I want to use is the one that was used by Technocracy Incorporated, which was a rather popular movement during the times of the Great Depression and the Post-Industrial Revolution. And this specific kind of technocracy not only placed engineers and people who knew what they were doing at the top to place them in political control, but it also wanted to completely change the way that we distribute resources. As opposed to trading for them, they wanted to create automated system distribution in which resources were given to people, and more or less people's work or the value of their work was in the creation of these structures and the efficiency that said structures in turn created. They were a group that was very much focused on sustainability. Their symbol, that yin-yang monad of white and red, represented a balance of consumption and production. Or you could say consumption and resources, because they actually tried to calculate how many resources are available to mankind. This is in stark contrast with any kind of monetary system, be it socialism or capitalism, communism. All of these things utilized money or attempted to utilize the system of money to achieve whatever their ideological ends were. Technocracy just said, let's do away with that. Let's embrace the potential that technology has. Let's embrace our potential and look beyond just merely this money-driven system, or like these many different money-driven systems. Try to use our imagination to come up with something better that utilizes the gift of Industrial Revolution technology, because I mean at the time this was as far as it had gotten.
Thank you for that introduction. So to proceed sequentially, the next topic is automation. So how does automation tie into technocracy, and what is the significance of automation for the future and the present?
Well, you see, as opposed to the times before the Industrial Revolution, we have now replaced so many jobs that were done with human hands, with things like factories, and in modern age, stuff like robots and software engineers. And the reason that this is so important to technocracy is because it's important to understand that people aren't the principal engines of production any longer. Machines are. Factories, etc. So this is why, a lot of people like to say, well, under your system, people wouldn't have to work to survive, and that's bad. But I say that my system, or the system that I advocate for, wouldn't rely on the necessity of people working to survive, even when having humans in those positions is more detrimental than it is helpful to humanity. You're no longer chained by this idea that everyone must work in order to survive. Everyone must earn their worth. Because this was an idea that had come from a largely pre-technological civilization. For thousands and thousands of years, that was, of course, I mean, that was just material reality. But when you have this automation technology and you have the ability to replace humans at their work with these machines that don't tend to make anywhere near as many mistakes as humans do, you should embrace it instead of having this backlash and be like, no, people have to work. It's bad. You're a bad person if you don't work, just like every caveman had up to this point. So I'm saying that automation is so important to embrace. Let it be that we are able to not be addicted to having people have jobs. Having that mentality is holding us back so hard. I want us to embrace the ability to do better without having to do more.
Very well said. So would this be like a fully automated luxury space communism kind of idea where you have robots do all the work, everybody has a post-scarcity society, and we all have more than we need. We don't need to work. We engage ourselves in aesthetic or hedonistic pursuits or creative pursuits or intellectual pursuits and have a post-scarcity future. Is that the idea?
Yes, and the thing about the whole post-scarcity thing is, like, people think, oh, that's a million miles away. Well, the person I'm going to talk about, Bernard London, and the similar ideas that he carried, those really the things that are forcing us to be a scarcity civilization in the first place. Because think about it, how are we not in a way a post-scarcity civilization already if we have to use artificial scarcity to make things become scarce enough in order for our society to digest it? I mean, we're forcing things to be scarce. It's ridiculous. And I mean, yes, there's the whole meme of the fully automated luxury gay space communism. Just to, I guess that just helps. It is somewhat humorous, but it really can be a reality if we just stop shooting ourselves in the toes. Why are we so obsessed with shooting ourselves in the foot and making the world a worse place on purpose? It's utterly bizarre to me. Why can't we be a post-scarcity society? Yeah.
Indeed so. Indeed so. So the next subject is the relevance that technology has to all subjective moralities. So do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. This might take a little bit of an explanation. I'll try to be succinct, but there's a couple kind of stories-ish I have to go through. So let's imagine that you have this church, right? And this church believes that jumping is moral, right? The higher you jump, the better, the closer you are to God, and the more holy and righteous you are. That's their weird belief. I'm not advocating for it, just a hypothetical belief system. Then now, what can they do? What aspect is relevant to their ability to jump high? What's relevant to their capacity to jump high? Well, it's knowledge about the human ability to jump. It's technology that would allow them to have legs that were better at jumping, or maybe even ultimately like transhuman implants in their feet that let them soar up into the sky. But no matter how you slice it, technology is relevant to that goal of jumping high. And here's the thing: even if there's a proposed limit to how much jumping is moral, technology is still relevant to achieving exactly that goal and nothing further. So let's say you have an offshoot of the Church of the Holy Jump or whatever, and it's a Church of the Holy Limited Jump. They believe that jumping any higher than like 2 feet in the air is heresy. So even in that case, the technology that they obtain to achieve exactly 2 foot jumps and nothing higher remains relevant. So even if you think there's just a certain limit and bam, there's something else, technology remains relevant in this case. And to take it even further, have you, Shogun? Are you aware? Have you ever heard of the trolley problem, and the moral problem of the trolley?
Yes.
Okay, well, just to briefly explain it to anyone who might not have heard this, this is a classic philosophical problem where you have two groups of people on a trolley, and the trolley is going really fast, and you have to pick one or the other to let die. So, like, do you kill 5 babies or 10 medical workers? I mean, there's a bunch of variations on it from the variables. But the thing is that's interesting about this is if you look behind the curtain of this philosophical problem, you see that technology is relevant even here. Because your ability to, because if you had the better technology to stop the train tracks, you would not have to make the choice of killing one baby or the other, to killing one group of people or the other. You could save both. So the problem in the trolley problem, aside from, I mean, obviously there's certain things that are valuable to explore about this sort of situation, but the problem of the trolley problem is that you don't have the ability to stop. So what I'm saying here is that technology is relevant to these various moral decisions. And you might say, well, Wolvenreign, if you're trying to say that there's no moral system to which technology is not relevant, and I would say yes. And you might say, well, what about the sort of moral system that believes that technology is evil? And to this, I say technology is still relevant even there. And the reason for this is that if you believe that technology is evil, you have to have technology in order to destroy other technology. You still need that knowledge. You still need that, which is why, I mean, personally, that's why I kind of think anarcho-primitivism, where it's that whole return to monkey meme. I think it's kind of like divide by zero in math. It's just kind of a weird, I don't know. I don't know quite how to describe it, but it just kind of falls in on itself for that reason, in my opinion. And it's also relevant not only to what capacity you have in order to effectuate your own moral vision of the world. It's also relevant to the things that you don't have to do in order to see your morality come to life. Like, just a quick example. Let's say you have 2 villages and they're starving, and the only way to save them is to rob one village to feed the other. Again, capacity is relevant here. And if capacity is relevant, then technology, which is knowledge that empowers our capacity, remains relevant as well. So if you instead had a food generation machine, it wouldn't matter. You just push the button and let it go. So it's like this sort of inductive argument about the morality, or it's like inductive ethics, I guess you could say. I personally, I currently do not see any sort of morality or a system of subjective morality in which technology is not relevant to achieving those goals and to stopping yourself from making compromises in achieving that morality. I hope that makes sense. I mean, maybe it was a little long-winded, but I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you very much. So to continue to the next point, that would take us to the unspeakable evil of Bernard London, which I'm quite curious about as I'm not familiar with this character. So can you tell us about who was Bernard London and why was he so unspeakably evil?
Well, Bernard London was one of, I'm not saying he was the absolutely like the first person to come up with this idea, but back during their 30s, Technocracy Incorporated was actually a very, very, very large movement that talked about some of the ideas that I'm espousing now, talking about, using resource distribution instead of just derping and relying on money and making compromises for the sake of money. They wanted to say, hey, let's actually measure our resources and create infrastructure that uses those resources efficiently and embraces the maximum level of technology without like necessarily relying on jobs. But people hate change. They really do. They like the masses just can't stand it. So basically, a lot of people were thinking, well, how do we recover from the Great Depression while using money? We just got to use the money. You got to use the money. So Bernard London came up with this idea, and his idea was initially to make government have stamp labels on goods, and after a certain time, the government would come in and purposely destroy those goods. Now, that's not the iteration of his idea that actually came into being. What really came into being was just companies deciding to make things bad and breakable on purpose so that they break down faster than they normally would. And this allowed things to be bought again so that the economy could circulate. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would be like, oh, what a hero. But to me, that is despicable. That is like relevant to like what I was saying about technology, the state of technology being relevant to all subjective moralities. Like no matter what you think, no matter what your morality is, it's still the level of technology that's available to you is relevant. So like let's say your thing is to feed the hungry, or completely the opposite, I guess. Kill all the kids in the world, whatever bizarre evil crap, right? Your ability to make the world a better place, even in your own eyes, has been flabbergasted by this disgusting cretin who popularized the idea of, I got a great idea. Let's make everything worse on purpose. Woohoo! So think about it. This guy decided, like, okay, we're not going to embrace the abundance of technology. We're not going to allow there to be more abundance for everyone to enjoy. We're going to let everybody starve. People just got to starve to death. Totally fine, right? Totally okay, as long as the money gods are pleased, as long as money works again. And the idea caught on like wildfire. Industry was like, oh yeah, this sounds like a great idea. And in 1938 there was the Agricultural Adjustment Act, in which the government, on purpose, destroyed livestock, destroyed crops by plowing them over. And keep in mind, this was in the middle of the Dust Bowl crisis. Even with the Dust Bowl being there, there was not enough scarcity or commodity to keep the monetary system ticking. So they were like, I got a great idea. Let's follow Bernard London's idea and just destroy as much as we can, and then purposely like incentivize businesses through agricultural subsidies, for example, to not produce enough so that the prices don't drop so drastically that the monetary system can't work anymore, because that's what the Great Depression was. It was massive deflation. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that is so unspeakably disgusting. I mean, I'm making a systemic critique here. I'm just saying, if people need one historical figure to look at and say, that's where it started, you could do a lot worse than Bernard London. I mean, honestly, he was just trying to help, truth be told. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and boy, is it cooking in here. I would say that indirectly, this man is responsible for the deaths caused more directly by Hitler and Stalin. Because each of these people, Hitler and Stalin, they ran their countries using the monetary system. They embraced the idea of making things scarce on purpose just so money could keep on floating by. And even to this day, think about just how many people would have been saved if there was not this scarcity imposed on us. How many starving children might have been saved if there was just enough food and we just decided to deliver it to them? How many how much technology might have been improved if we were not purposefully hampering our technology just so that it can be sold more? That's what I mean. It's like the immorality of this has bounced off of everything that we know. It's created a huge chaining ripple effect throughout the technology tree. Because this company owns this and this is proprietary, well, that means that we're not allowed to study it. We're not allowed to improve it. We're not allowed to improve its capacity and the capacity that it has for the human race. We're not. It's just not allowed, guys, because money is so way more important to keep around when we could be. It's we're sitting with our thumbs up our ass when we could be embracing our potential as a species instead of just all this ridiculous, stupid bickering and war over these plots of land. And then like, oh, what do they do when they get the plots of land? Inevitably, we're gonna grow things on here, but we're gonna not grow enough. Got to make sure. Just got to make sure that's bad. That's what I mean. It's just evil is subjective. It's true, but if we want to say that evil is the opposite of our own subjective moralities, the morality that each of us holds individually, then I would say that one label of evil would apply to everyone's subjective morality. I mean, feel free to come up with a counterexample. I just don't see it right now. But that's my current view on it. That's why I say this man is just pure, unspeakable evil.
Well, thank you. That was well said. So I think we should open it up now for audience questions, comments. I could certainly ask maybe nobody else. Does anyone have a comment for Mr. Wolvenreign?
I do. I noticed that years back when I first found out that they would be dumping milk or, like you were saying, about the crops and creating that artificial scarcity, right, to justify higher prices. Do you see any way that can be changed? Like, how can we get rid of that? Is it possible to get rid of that and then replace it with something that's actually beneficial for people aside from tossing things? I don't know. Do you see that there's a way around that or out of that?
Well, I really think that in a lot of ways it's a crisis of imagination. We we're not imagining things outside of the box when it comes to economics, when it comes to resource distribution. For example, take a look at Wikipedia's article on economics, right? That entire article is completely and utterly dedicated to bizarre concepts like GDP, or like it's all spoken of in the tongue of money. So I think if we're ever going to solve this, we first have to get our minds out of the money box. Stop thinking that it's inevitable, like, oh, we've got to use money, even if we go so far as to be communist or Nazi or whatever. I mean, just quit. I say to everyone, stop letting your imaginations be so easily halted. Think about things in terms of just raw resources. We have this much metal. We have this much milk. We have this much X, Y, and Z. and think about what the most rational way would be to distribute them. And that's what Technocracy Incorporated envisioned, and it was wildly popular in the 30s. And don't get me wrong, I don't do argumentum ad populum, because I mean, if I did that, money would obviously win. But what I'm saying is we can't let this idea that commodity must rule everything stop us from coming up with a better solution. I would encourage everyone here, just to, even if you don't necessarily agree with Technocracy Incorporated itself or the ideas that it specifically held, watch the Technocracy presentation on YouTube. It's very old. I've got to remake it with my voice sometime if I ever get around to it. But it will help you imagine a system that does not use money, that does not need to assume the use of money. So that's, I really, like I said, it's a crisis of imagination. We've got to think outside the money box.
There's also a good guy who wrote a book called Technocracy Rising. So the sorry for the cars. Let me get it earlier. The concept was almost like a universal basic income with energy credits, though, right? They had the systems of energy set up. The systems of energy were set up, and then they were going to just UBI it out to people and give them like a monthly allotment. And that would be the monetary system, yeah.
And I would say that there is a big difference between the monetary systems version of UBI and the Technocracy version of UBI, because the monetary systems version of UBI, you still have the problems of relying on the existence of jobs, relying on things being artificially scarce. So you're still ultimately going to have the same problems. You're just moving them around a little bit. But yeah, what they used back then was energy credits. I would update that to be something more like strictly accounting for resources and using them in the most efficient way that our technology allows.
But I think they broke it down so much so that it was like by calorie, for example. You know how like a calorie is to raise the temperature of water, like this much wood is this many calories of gas. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I'm saying it certainly was relying on science that was there at the time. But I would say on two things on it. One, of course, it would need to be updated to match modern scientific standards. But two, it would also need a mechanism to continue to evolve along modern scientific standards.
Would also need to take into account sustainability too, because they would have to devise the most sustainability, which, by the way, correlates to the Sustainable Development Scenario Agenda 21 that was going on. That had a lot of what was in Technocracy, the old ones. A lot of what's been going on over the last 70 years has been kind of bits and pieces were coming out of it, like a playbook almost.
Exactly. And that's what the Technocracy monad stands for. I'm not sure which color is which, but it basically is like the balance of consumption and production.
So to get there, do you think we would have to get into the fourth industrial revolution? Now, the fourth industrial revolution, for those that don't know, require like everyone to have the internet, and everything has like nodes that logs how many times a motor spins around, so they know how to maximize it, through artificial intelligence eventually.
I think what's really going to be necessary is to just rub people's face in automation. Just confront them with the reality again and again and again until they finally get it.
I think we could just ban condoms. If we just ban condoms, it would fix it all. Then it would be really raw.
But I'm just saying, like, people need to be confronted with the reality that the robots are here. They're here to stay. I mean, automation of all kinds, not just robots, but the automation is here to stay. We don't need to force people to go to work. We need to embrace technology so that we can save more human lives, advance science, and enjoy life even more. Why are we doing all this ritual and bizarre levels of sacrifice for the money gods? Ugh. Gross. I don't know. I just feel like I got to rub people's nose in it like a dog, like rubbing a dog's nose in its own shit, just to like get the idea that like, go outside to poop, embrace automation. Jeez Louise.
There's clear fallacies within our monetary system. I mean, like, there's been 665 fiat currencies, and they've all gone to the value of zero. The only one that hasn't right now is sitting at the top with the petrodollar. We are technically backed on the dollar though, so there's a little bit of technocracy to it because we've gone off gold standard and stuff like that. But the value does fluctuate with the value of crude. But it's not sustainable. It doesn't. You can't do this. You can't do the petrodollar in a sustainable developed world. So I mean, it's like while the dreams are out there for stuff like this, and it is possible if everybody put their head together. The problem is Sky Daddy stuff still going on too.
Yeah. And just to be clear though, like, I guess you mean like a really little amount of technocracy and then that being backed by that because it's backed by like but yeah, I mean, it would still be subject to the whims of commodity and artificial scarcity. So yeah. So Black Feathers, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I want to say something and ask a question. The problem with automation right now and with technology and all that is that it works, at least for now, it works for the elites and for the capitalist machine. So obviously it's detrimental to the population. But the question that I got is, in your system, basically, in technocracy that you're proposing, technology would be working for humans, and what about the assimilation of humans to technology? Or is that necessary? Or, I mean, you could say it's inevitable, but is it necessary? Or can humans just leave be and live?
Oh, they can do whatever they want. I mean, in my system, you can be free to assimilate or not assimilate, but well, let me put it this way as well. Like, I think the only scenario in which I would think it becomes like absolutely necessary for humans to like be forced to assimilate is if we are really, and I mean really, really in the shitter for resources, like to the point where like humans have to be augmented to have the ability to not consume as many resources as possible. And I'm saying like that's a super extreme scenario. And also on your point to like automation, being harmful to the populace in the current state because money, I would say I just don't think it's so hopeless to convince rich people that this is a good idea and that they should totally give into it. The reason I say that is that technology defines our standard of living. Yeah. So the technology and the capacity that we have to live better lives. I mean, that was the whole point for rich people to get rich. I mean, maybe it's a large part of the point. I'm not going to speak for absolutely everyone, but a large part of it was just to live more comfortably. So if we just show them that this artificial scarcity thing is being baked into our monetary system, and that it's going to crash when there's too much automation anyway, and the entire system that props them up is just going to fall. Maybe we can convince. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying it will happen or it won't, but I'm just saying it's worth a try to at least show the rich that this is a better system because you, along with everyone else, will be propelled to the absolute maximum that human technology can even achieve. So I don't know. I just think it's worth a shot.
They'll never give it up. But like, in 1988, The Economist had a article discussing a global currency. Like they've had, and they also had the North American dollar, which was supposed to represent North America and South America, and there were going to be 3 quadrants of Earth and 3 different currencies, and New World Order stuff, whatever you want to call it. But they had it minted and ready, and they have it all on file, type shit, and they're think tanking the fuck out of it, I guarantee you. But I don't think that they're going down that road because for one reason, like the energy credit concept, you'd have to have like nuclear, like we'd have to have a competent nuclear power scenario going on, or figure out fusion and the ITER and all that we're working on. Like there's just like, because all the energy that we would use is you can only get so much from solar, you can only get so good with the panels, you can only get so much wind and water, you can only get so much in so many places of the planet. So it's like,
Right. So I would say, when it comes to technocracy, their idea is to make a survey first. That's why they tried to do the Continental Energy Survey, where they would actually go out and find out how much energy is out there. So I'm not even necessarily saying that it totally would work and everything's going to be hunky dory and all that shit. But what I am saying is that let's count it first. Let's count our technological capabilities and calculate what is possible.
Oh, I got it.
Go from there. Yeah. So like whatever it could be. I don't know. It could work.
Let's
maybe.
get like $1 billion investment. We'll start a small nuclear facility and start a community doing technocracy, and it'll be like the size of a city, funded by John Rockefeller, and maybe that we can test it there.
Maybe. My only concern with that is that like it would be screwed by the monetary system's global dominance and the fact that like you'd still need to make things artificially scarce in order to trade with the rest of the world. Kind of sucks. It is a tough problem. I'm not going to lie. Very tough problem.
Well, here's an interesting thought, because I've done an awful lot of research and study of this monetary system and or money and dollars and shit. And could it be that the only real energy, the only real money is human energy? Could it be that nothing exists without that?
No, that's kind of the opposite. I mean, I kind of was already saying like automation is what is making human power obsolete. And so the control of humans over money, like using money, is crashing. Like it becomes obsolete compared to the control of machines. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what then exists without human energy being put into it?
Well, a lot of machines that are doing what did I say? The infrastructure, automation.
Okay, well, how did any of that get started again without human energy, brother?
Well, I'm saying it started. That's true. It started with human energy, but over time, especially like when we got to the Industrial Revolution, that's when the principal engine of work changed from human hands to largely machines, like factories and the like. So it got us there, but we can't rely on it to continue forward, because obviously we're facing an automation quote unquote crisis, which wouldn't be a crisis if it wasn't for everyone relying on money. Like there would not be a problem with automation existing and doing everything for us if we weren't so obsessed with forcing people to work in order to make our economy chug and slug along.
Well, I could agree with that. And quite frankly, when it comes down to it, there's actually legislation out there that says that essentially there is no money. Money doesn't exist as an actual set form. Money is whatever two people agree upon in the time of contracting. A dollar is nothing more than a unit of measure.
Right.
This is where so many people get drawn into, like you were saying, they have no clue. Actually, there's legislation that says, for the most part, everything's already done. It's already paid for, because you can't pay for anything. There is no such thing as pay. The only thing that can be done with a debt is it can either be set off or discharged. That's it.
Right.
Which means that there's actually no debt either.
Right. It's all very much artifice and make believe, and that's the thing. I want technocracy. In my vision of technocracy, we're not playing with this monopoly money crap anymore. Let's focus on the real. Here's what's real: resources and technological capacity. Those are real factors, and we don't need to go through this weird pretend game in which we purposely dump our real shit.
That's why, because technically that, and even now, even with all the so-called technology, you can set some stuff up to where it's automated and it turns itself on every day at 5:30 a.m. and shuts itself every day off at 5:30 p.m. But still, somebody had to program that to make it happen. There's still always going to be a certain amount of human input, no matter what. There has to be. There will never be a complete elimination of human input unless you go full AI. But even at that, full AI didn't happen without human input.
Sure. And I agree, but just keep in mind, the amount of human input that will be necessary will be scaled down and scaled down and scaled down and continue to scale down. So in my vision of technocracy, right, people's standard of living, I mean, it was already this way even before technocracy, but it was obfuscated through the monetary system. People know that their standard of living is driven by technology. Everybody is aware of it. They all know. So everyone has the ability. Let's say something breaks or something needs to be innovated, or someone just wants to has a good idea and wants to make it into reality so that they themselves can enjoy it. They will have the capacity to do that. They won't be held back by the weird strictures of money, like the proprietary software, blah 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 blah. Right? Let's say, for example, let's take the repair thing. Where for some reason, our repair robots just aren't good enough to solve whatever problem. Right? So in my imagined system, and just my hypothetical system, not perfect, but hypothetical, potentially optimized, you have these alerts, let's just say like a smartphone app that shows the nearby infrastructure and how it's working and how it's going, and they'll send out like an alert to all of the nearby qualified people to handle the job that some part of the power grid, for example, has gone down and we really need someone to fix it ASAP. At that point, because you have so much automation, I would struggle to imagine that like all 1,000 people who could potentially fix the problem would all say no. I'm not gonna get off my ass and go fix this shit that props up my standard of living. I find that quite difficult to imagine. Now, granted, it's all gonna have to go through testing, lots and lots of testing. That's how science works. But I think that people will generally be like, oh shit, my standard of living is impacted bad. I've got to go fix this crap. I just make it more clear to people what needs to be fixed. And frankly, I think that whatever human energy that we have left will be given because people don't want to suffer through a power outage, for example, or whatever else, you know what I'm saying?
So is there anyone else who has a question or a comment for Mr. Wolvenreign?
One final comment. So half the world, 3.5 billion people, still don't have the internet, and a lot of other stuff is still kind of lacking. So we'd really be leaving a lot of cultures at a standstill if we went to something like that, because the system we have going right now needs to get those guys up in, to get to an even playing field, to even have the kind of technology that would be considered part of their lives the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would prefer it to be a global technocracy. I mean, that's just optimal to me, because then we have all of the people roped in. They all have the ability to help improve technology with their innovation, and we save as many human lives as possible, which is great to me personally. Yeah, I don't see any reason why we should hold back other people's. I honestly would just give it to everyone and make sure that the entire world is taken care of, and also that we don't, fucking blow ourselves up, or other capitalist countries like, yeah, they're not being scarce enough. Oh no, we gotta go over there and destroy them. fucking shit like that. You know how it is. Many times it's happened where, for example, Project Cybersyn was infiltrated and destroyed by America, because they were like, no, we can't let the test happen. Oh, not that. Anything but that. Anything but exposing how horrible and flawed our systems are. That was weird to me. I don't know why they.
Well, that wasn't the Americans doing it. They might have been paid to do it, but it wasn't the reason. Americans are like, we're the hammer and everything's the nail, and the people holding the hammer are the central banking system.
Yeah.
Well, the one interesting thing that you said earlier, and this is, I thought, really pretty poignant, because when you were talking about how people were basically worshiping money, and that I believe is absolutely true that they do. And from a spiritual man's standpoint, I'm led to believe that even in the Bible it says you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. which is interesting because it doesn't say God and Satan, because mammon is, I'm led to believe, synonymous with money and or the system. How interesting that is.
I would take that to mean, I mean, I'm not someone who believes in that personally, but I guess if I had to interpret it through my own vision, I would say, allows, I would replace God perhaps with one's own morality, and I would replace mammon with, like you said, the system. Why do we try to serve these two masters? Why do we try to serve this bizarre demon of artificial scarcity when it clearly opposes our capacity to follow our own moral truths? Like it's clearly just shooting ourselves in the toes over and over again and be like, why did my toes hurt? I don't get it. And I'm like, come on.
Like I like to say, shoot yourself in the foot and quickly reload.
Yeah, that's yeah. So yeah, I mean, I agree with the general sentiment. Like, why don't we just go ahead and serve our own moral truths by advancing technology as much as possible, as opposed to just like worshiping this weird game of money where we make our own crap worse on purpose and force everyone to have a job. That's another thing. Like, why don't you go serve your own moral purpose, whatever your purpose is in life, instead of participating in this weird pretend game where we pretend that we're not a post-scarcity society and that we have to live in the dark ages. It's just also silly to me. I just want it dead. I want money. So let's just, I'm so tired of like all all the political conversations, all the economics conversations. They're all envision money being used in one way or the other. Do we tax people more? Do we tax people less? Just the assumption. It's killing me here.
Well, how interesting it is, and I'll tell you from my own personal experience, because we've obviously gone down a very closely paralleled path here on this thing called money, and I've actually played this out. I understand certain things such as intent, and what the difference between using something versus even owning something and so on.
Yeah.
And I can assure you right now that I could pretty much walk into any store and grab whatever it is I need to use and leave with it and not have to stop at the so-called register, not have to barter for some kind of so-called pay. Because again, I understand certain parts of the system and I've played it out, and yeah, it works. If you understand how the system actually is, you can do an awful lot and not have to worry about, oh my God, can I pay for it? When you realize that there is no such thing as paying.
Well, I mean, in my system, there wouldn't be, you wouldn't be accosted by anyone for just, it's more or less, it's just a lot of buttons. Like you push a button, you get the thing. We'd be using kind of like, I mean, I know it's kind of being trapped in the imagination again, but just kind of imagine like Amazon's recent like infrastructure, but totally on steroids, jacked to the maximum, where like anything, like truly anything, is available at the push of a button, because there's just no point in forcing things to be artificially scarce anymore. It's just way more hassle than it's worth.
Well, there's a lot of that, and I would have to agree. But in the legal system, and this is straight up how the legal system actually operates. If you don't think you're stealing because you know the difference and you just need to use something, and I actually had conversations with the professors when I was in law school over this. And it's a matter of, if you think you're stealing, then you're stealing. If you just need to use something and you understand that that's all you're doing, you didn't steal anything. And it's that simple.
Yeah, it's legal fiction for sure.
Well, this same professor confirmed this one thing, essentially confirmed the entire system to be essentially non-existent in so many ways. And that was in one day he was talking about the ambiguity of the system, essentially to make his story short.
So,
he talked
Mr. Wolvenreign, thank you so much for your time and everything that you shared with us today. Did you have perhaps a final takeaway that you want to leave with the audience?
Sure. If there's one thing I could get everyone here listening tonight to do, break free of the monetary system's prison mindset. Just let your mind be free of it. Whatever future you imagine for this world, it's going to be made better by not forcing things to be worse on purpose. I mean, that should seem frankly obvious. But the second thing I would have you do if you want to go beyond that is to watch the Technocracy presentation on YouTube. It's like from the 70s. It's with a guy named Arvid Peterson. Have a look. And even if you don't agree with the way that system works in particular, just watch that and get a sense for how things could be figured out, how things could go in a way that doesn't require the weird, ritualistic, artificial restrictions of the monetary system.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate it, Wolvenreign. And thank you for your time and for your information. Thank you to the audience. Is there anyone who had another important question they wanted to ask? No, I think we should wrap it up there. I'm sorry, but since we gave your final thoughts. So thanks, everybody. Join us on the Roundtable Discord server every day about 8 or 9 p.m. Central. We have a podcast, our live presentation or special event. Find future events and hashtag announcements, past and hashtag RT podcast. We got 4 different channels, a video channel, a BitChute channel, an old YouTube archive audio channel, and a new YouTube channel for our newest episodes. Like, follow, subscribe. Thanks very much. God bless. Let's jump upstairs to the pub, please. I'll see you guys upstairs. Thanks again, Wolvenreign.